He, a skeptical tycoon, blinded by disillusionment. She, a pure and innocent young woman, radiating naivete. At a gala, Clara trips, and Julian instinctively catches her. At the touch, she abruptly pulls away. "Don't touch me." The cry, filled with vulnerability, paralyzes Julian. Shocked by her purity, the millionaire falls in love with her innocence. Get ready for a twist where high society and the past will try to destroy the tycoon's love for the virgin who shouted, "Don't touch me." But her purity may be the key to healing a heart. Watch this story until the end. You will be surprised by this story. If you like love stories, romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. Every day, we post videos like this. Moving on, the March rain fell heavily on Manhattan, turning the streets into mirrors that reflected the neon lights of the skyscrapers. On the 50th floor of the Vance Tower, Julian watched the city through the bulletproof windows of his office, his hands firmly holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. At 41, he had built an energy empire spanning the entire continent, but at that moment, he contemplated only the emptiness that success had left in his soul. His cell phone vibrated on the mahogany desk. Another woman interested in his bank account, feigning passion. Julian hung up without answering. He had learned, through bitter disappointments, that intimacy was just another battlefield, where vulnerability became ammunition against him. Better to keep his distance, better to stay in control. Across town, in the small Petals and Dreams flower shop, Clara Alencar was arranging the last bouquets of the day with delicate fingers that trembled slightly with fatigue. At 27, she preserved a genuine sweetness that seemed anachronistic in such a ruthless metropolis. Her hazel eyes shone with a purity that made even the most cynical people uncomfortable, as if she could see through the masks that everyone wore. The flower shop rent was overdue again. Clara bit her lower lip, mentally calculating how much she still needed to pay off the debts. Her mother, Donna Helena, had called earlier asking for money for her medication, and Clara knew she couldn't refuse. She never did. That's how it worked in her family. She worked, saved every penny, and the others depended on her silent generosity. "Clara, you need to value yourself more," she muttered to herself, repeating the words that her only close friend Beatrice always told her. But how could she value herself when the world seemed to conspire to constantly remind her of her place? She was the cleaning lady's daughter, the shy girl who chose flowers over people because flowers didn't hurt, didn't lie, didn't disappoint. The flower shop phone rang, interrupting her melancholy thoughts. Petals and Dreams, Clara speaking. "Ms. Alencar." The male voice was formal, almost intimidating. "This is Mark Henriquez, executive assistant at the Vance Corporation. We need your services for a last-minute event tomorrow night. It's urgent." Clara felt her heart race. The Vance Corporation was one of those companies that appeared in the news, always associated with astronomical figures and political scandals. What kind of event?" "A charity gala for 300 guests at the Waldorf Astoria. Our original florist had a family emergency. I heard you've worked on smaller events for some of our partner NGOs." It was true. Clara had provided simple arrangements for 2 charities that received sponsorship from Vance, but nothing on this scale. "Mr. Enriquez, I appreciate the confidence, but I'm not sure if the payment will be $50,000, Ms. Alencar, half up front today." Clara almost dropped the phone. $50,000 would solve all her problems and still leave resources to invest in the flower shop. "I accept," she said, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. "Perfect. You'll be at the hotel tomorrow at 2 p.m. for setup. The event starts at 8 p.m. "Oh, and Ms. Alencar." The man's voice grew more serious. "This is a very important event for Mr. Julian Vance personally. He will be attending and expects perfection." After hanging up, Clara stood still for long minutes, processing what had just happened. Julian Vance, the tycoon himself, would be there, observing her work. She had seen photos of him in magazines, an imposing man with piercing eyes and an always controlled expression, as if he carried the weight of the world on his broad shoulders. The next morning, Clara arrived at the Waldorf Astoria 2 hours early, her heart pounding as she coordinated the delivery of hundreds of white roses, orchids, and exotic foliage. Each arrangement was positioned with millimeter precision, each detail designed to create an atmosphere of sophisticated elegance. The ballroom began to fill up at 8 p.m. Clara watched discreetly from a corner, checking if everything remained perfect, when the murmur of conversations diminished. Julian Vance had arrived. He was even more imposing in person, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an impeccable tuxedo that accentuated his magnetic presence. His dark hair had streaks of gray at the temples, and when his eyes swept across the room, Clara felt as if he could see through people, right into their souls. For an irrational moment, she wished she could become invisible. But then Julian stopped, his eyes fixed on the floral arrangements with an expression of genuine surprise. He approached one of the centerpieces, delicately touching a rose petal, and Clara saw something that the photographs had never captured: a subtle, almost imperceptible vulnerability. "Beautiful work," she heard him murmur to Mark, who accompanied him. "Who was responsible?" "The florist, Clara Alencar, sir." "That girl over there in the corner?" Julian turned in the indicated direction, and his eyes met Clara's across the crowded room. For an instant that seemed eternal, the world around disappeared. Clara felt exposed, as if he could read every thought, every insecurity, every secret dream she held in her heart. Then Julian started walking in her direction, and Clara realized that her life was about to change forever. Julian crossed the room with measured steps, his presence causing the surrounding conversations to become respectful whispers. Clara felt her legs tremble, but she stood firm, raising her chin with a dignity she didn't even know she possessed. "Ms. Alencar?" His voice was deep, captivating, but there was a calculated coldness in it. "Julian Vance?" "Mr. Vance." Clara gave a small bow, her cheeks flushing. "I hope that the arrangements meet your expectations." Julian observed her with a disconcerting intensity, noticing every detail: the simplicity of her unassuming black dress, the absence of expensive jewelry, the way she kept her hands clasped together to hide her nervousness. "More than that, there's something authentic about your work, something I rarely see." The comment surprised her. Clara expected formality, perhaps a polite critique or a perfunctory compliment, but there was an unexpected sincerity in his words that made her momentarily forget where she was. "Flowers have their own language," she replied softly. "They don't lie. They don't pretend to be what they're not. That makes them safe." Julian raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the response. It had been decades since anyone had said something so genuine to him. "Safe? Yes." Clara blushed more intensely, realizing that she had revealed more than she intended. "Sorry, sometimes I talk too much about my work." "Don't apologize." Julian's voice softened almost imperceptibly. "It's refreshing to hear someone speak with genuine passion." At that moment, a tall and elegant woman approached, her Louboutin heels echoing on the marble floor. Veronica Castillo, Julian's ex-fiancée and heiress to one of the country's most influential families, smiled with a cutting coldness. "Julian, darling, you've disappeared," she said, completely ignoring Clara. "The investors are waiting for you at the head table." Julian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Veronica? And who is this charming person?" Veronica finally turned her gaze to Clara, scrutinizing her from head to toe with poorly disguised disdain. "Clara Alencar, responsible for the floral arrangements," Julian replied, his voice returning to its formal tone. Veronica laughed, a melodious sound but devoid of warmth. "How lovely. Flowers are so temporary, aren't they? They wither so quickly." Her eyes gleamed with malice. especially when taken from their natural environment. Clara felt the words like a slap, perfectly understanding the cruel metaphor. But before she could respond, Julian stepped forward, his posture becoming protective. The most beautiful things are often the most delicate, Veronica. That doesn't make them less valuable. On the contrary. The tension between the three was palpable. Veronica narrowed her eyes, noticing something new in Julian's attitude, something she couldn't quite decipher. "Of course," she said with a forced smile. "Well, Julian, you know where to find me when you're done appreciating the flowers." After Veronica walked away, the silence between Julian and Clara became charged with a dangerous electricity. Clara knew she should leave, go back to her small, safe world, but something about the way Julian had defended her kept her paralyzed. "I'm sorry about that," Julian murmured. "Veronica can be acerbic." "She's not wrong," Clara replied softly. "I don't belong in this world. You're just what?" The intensity returned to Julian's gaze, as if her answer were crucial. Clara met his eyes, and for a moment she let him see her vulnerability. "Someone who takes care of flowers because they're kinder than people." The answer hit Julian like a punch to the chest. There was a recognizable pain in those words, a loneliness that mirrored his own. Without thinking, he reached out towards her face, wanting to touch that delicate face, to offer some kind of comfort. Clara saw the movement and recoiled instinctively, her eyes widening with a mixture of panic and surprise. Don't touch me!" The words came out louder than she intended, laden with a vulnerability so pure that several heads turned in their direction. Julian froze, his hands still in the air between them. Never in his adult life had a woman recoiled from his touch with such innocence. There was no calculation, no seduction game, just genuine fear and a purity that struck him like lightning. "Clara," he whispered, but she was already backing away, her cheeks burning with shame for the scene she had caused. Sorry, I need to go," she stammered, grabbing her small purse. "It was a pleasure meeting you, Mr. Vance." She hurried out of the ballroom, leaving Julian standing there, still processing what had happened. Around him, the whispers began. Speculations about who that girl was, who had rejected the touch of the country's most powerful tycoon. In the following days, Julian couldn't get Clara out of his mind. The image of those wide eyes, the purity of that "don't touch me," the way she had trembled not with desire but with genuine fear. All of it haunted him. He had met hundreds of women, but never one who made him question everything he thought he knew about intimacy and power. Clara, on the other hand, buried herself in her work, trying to forget the humiliation and the way Julian's almost touch had awakened sensations she didn't know how to name. But then, the following Thursday, Mark called again. "Ms. Alencar, Mr. Vance would like to hire you for a special project. A monthly event at his private residence for select guests only. The payment would be substantial." Clara held the phone with trembling hands. "What kind of project?" "Arrangements for intimate dinners. The first would be next Saturday. Mr. Vance was very specific. He wants only you, Ms. Alencar. No one else will do." Clara closed her eyes, knowing she was on the edge of a precipice. Accepting would mean seeing Julian again, submitting to that disturbing intensity that made her question everything about herself. Refusing would mean losing a financial opportunity that could change her life forever. "I accept," she heard herself say, sealing her fate. Julian's mansion in Beverly Hills was a monument to power and solitude. Clara drove through the electronic gates, her small car completely clashing with the imposing architecture and the meticulously manicured gardens. Her hands were sweating as she gripped the steering wheel, and she wondered for the 1,000th time why she had accepted this job. The butler, a middle-aged man with impeccable posture, greeted her at the entrance. "Miss Alencar, Mr. Vance is waiting for you in the conservatory. Please follow me." She was led through hallways adorned with works of art that probably cost more than her entire house. The conservatory was a magnificent greenhouse filled with exotic plants and a breathtaking view of the illuminated pool. Julian was standing near the windows, wearing a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, more casual than she had ever seen him. Clara. He turned around, and she noticed that there was something different in his expression, less controlled, more human. "Thank you for coming." "It's my job, Mr. Vance," she replied formally, maintaining a safe distance as she surveyed the space. "This setting is perfect for tropical arrangements. What kind of event do you have in mind?" Julian hesitated, and Clara realized that he seemed nervous, an emotion that didn't suit the powerful man she had met. "Actually, there is no event." Clara blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "I lied." He ran a hand through his hair, disarranging it slightly. "I couldn't stop thinking about you since that night. About the way you recoiled, as if my touch was dangerous." Clara's heart leaped. "Mr. Vance, I don't understand." "Julian," he corrected softly, "and I needed to see you again to understand why a woman like you exists in a world like this." Clara felt her defenses rising. "A woman like me?" "Pure," he said simply, and the word hung in the air between them like a confession. "Genuine, untainted by all the corruption I see daily." Clara's cheeks burned. "You don't know me. Then let me." Julian took a cautious step towards her, stopping when he saw her shoulders stiffen. "Please, just stay for dinner. Talk to me." There was something in his voice, a hidden vulnerability that touched Clara's compassionate heart. Against her better judgment, she nodded. Dinner was served on an intimate balcony, just for two. Julian had dismissed the staff, insisting on pouring the wine personally. Clara, who rarely drank, felt slightly lightheaded after the first glass. "Tell me about yourself," Julian requested, his voice softer than she had ever heard. "Your family, your dreams." Clara toyed with the rim of her glass, considering how much to reveal. "There's not much to tell. My mother worked her whole life as a cleaning lady to support the family after my father abandoned us. I grew up taking care of my younger sister while Mom worked 3 jobs. And your father?" Julian asked gently. Clara's face hardened almost imperceptibly. He was a man who promised a lot and delivered little. He left us when I was 12, taking all the savings Mum had put away." She raised her eyes, meeting Julian's compassionate gaze. "Since then, I've learned that it's better to trust flowers than people." Julian felt a sharp pain in his chest. Clara's story of abandonment explained so much about her defensive reaction, her purity preserved as a protective mechanism. "And you?" Clara asked, surprising herself with her own courage. "How does a man build an empire before 40? Julian's face closed off slightly. Determination, focus, the ability to make difficult choices. "That's a business magazine answer," Clara observed with a small smile. "I told you about my father. What's your secret?" Julian was silent for a long moment, swirling the wine in his glass. When he finally spoke, his voice was laden with an old pain. "My father abandoned me too, in a way. Not physically, but emotionally. He was a powerful man, always focused on business, always distant. When my mother died of cancer at 40, he barely attended the funeral." Julian paused, his eyes fixed on the distance. "She died alone, Clara, in a cold hospital while he was closing another deal in New York." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "Julian, I swore I would never be like him. But look at me now, living alone in this mansion, surrounded by luxury, but with no one to share it with. Maybe coldness is hereditary." Without thinking, Clara reached across the table, her fingers lightly touching Julian's. This time, she didn't recoil. The touch was soft, comforting, and Julian felt as if an electric current ran through his body. "You're not cold," she whispered. "A cold man wouldn't have noticed my flowers, wouldn't have protected me from that cruel woman." Julian turned his palm up, interlacing his fingers with hers. "Clara, I'm not a good man. I've done terrible things to build this empire. I've destroyed companies, ruined lives, but that's not who you are here now with me. Clara interrupted, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "Here you're just Julian, a man who lost his mother too early and never learned to trust in love." The simplicity of her words broke something inside Julian. He brought their interlaced hand to his lips, gently kissing the knuckles of Clara's fingers. She trembled but didn't pull away. "You're dangerous," he murmured against her skin. "You make me want things I swore I would never desire again." "What things?" Clara asked, her breathing quickening. "Real intimacy, vulnerability, the chance to be loved for who I really am, not for what I own." The moment was interrupted by the sound of Julian's phone, ringing insistently. He cursed under his breath, but answered when he saw it was Mark. "Julian, I'm sorry to bother you, but we need to talk. There's a situation with the audit of the subsidiary in Phoenix. Some irregularities have been discovered and—" Julian hung up abruptly, but the spell of the moment had been broken. Clara saw the cold mask returning to his face, the businessman reassuming control. "I should go," she said softly, standing up. "Clara, don't—" Julian also stood up but stopped when he saw the determination in her eyes. "This was a mistake," she said, more to herself than to him. "We're from different worlds, Julian, and in the end, you'll always choose your empire." "That's not true, isn't it?" Clara picked up her purse, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Then why, even now, can I see you calculating how to solve the problem that just came up? You'll never be able to love completely, Julian. There will always be something more important than anyone in your life." She left before he could answer, leaving Julian alone on the balcony, haunted by the painful truth of her words and by the realization that, for the first time in decades, he desperately wished she was wrong. 3 weeks passed in torturous silence. Julian plunged into business with an almost savage intensity, trying to forget the taste of Clara's fingers against his lips and the echo of her last words. But every meeting, every business decision, only confirmed her accusation. He would always put the empire first. Clara, on the other hand, refused 2 job offers that came through Mark, claiming a busy schedule. In fact, she spent her days at the flower shop creating increasingly elaborate arrangements, as if she could exorcise her feelings through the flowers. But at night, alone in her small apartment, she found herself reliving every moment of that night at the mansion. It was on a rainy Thursday that fate intervened in a brutal way. Clara was returning home after delivering a wedding bouquet when she saw the lights of fire trucks and ambulances on her mother's street. Her heart leaped as she ran, ignoring the rain that soaked her completely. "Mom!" she cried, finding Donna Helena being loaded onto a stretcher, unconscious and with an oxygen mask. "What happened?" "Heart attack," the paramedic informed her. "We need to get her to New York Presbyterian Hospital immediately." "Are you family?" "I'm her daughter. Please, let me go with her." At the hospital, Clara spent hours in the waiting room, her clothes still wet, trembling more from fear than cold. The doctor finally appeared with a somber expression. "Dr. Carver, how is she?" "Ms. Alencar, your mother suffered an extensive heart attack. We managed to stabilize her, but she needs urgent bypass surgery. Without it—" "Do the surgery," Clara interrupted. "The problem is, her insurance doesn't cover this type of procedure. The cost would be approximately $200,000, not including ICU and recovery expenses." Clara felt the world spin. $200,000. It was more money than she would earn in 10 years. "Doctor, please, there has to be a way." "I'm sorry. We can keep her stable for a few hours, maybe days, but without the surgery—" Clara left the hospital walking like a sleepwalker. The rain had stopped, but she didn't even notice. She was sitting on a park bench across from the hospital, crying silently, when a familiar voice made her look up. "Clara?" Julian was there, wearing an elegant suit that contrasted with the hospital setting. He had seen her through the car window as he drove by, a small, desolate figure on the wet bench. "Julian?" Clara quickly wiped away her tears. "What? Why are you here?" He approached cautiously, as if she were an injured animal that might run away at any moment. "I saw you from the street. You looked like you Needed help. I don't need your help, she said automatically, but her voice trembled, betraying her words. Julian sat down next to her on the bench, maintaining a respectful distance. Your mother? Clara nodded, unable to trust her own voice. Julian waited in silence, and something about his calm presence made her break down. Heart attack. She needs urgent surgery, but it costs $200,000 and I don't have it. The words came out brokenly, each one cutting her throat. She's going to die, Julian. My mother is going to die because I'm too poor to save her. Julian felt a physical pain in his chest, seeing her so shattered. Without thinking twice, he took his cell phone out of his pocket. Mark, I need you to transfer $300,000 to the New York Presbyterian Hospital account now. Yes, now, to cover all medical expenses for Donna Helena Alencar, and I want the best cardiac surgeon in the city operating on her. Julian, no! Clara tried to grab the phone from him, but he gently moved away. It's done, he said after hanging up. Your mother will have the best possible surgery. Clara stared at him with a mixture of gratitude and panic. I can't accept this. Not like this. Why not? Because... She struggled to find the words. Because it makes me just like all the other women in your life. Someone who needs your money. Julian gently cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. Clara, you're crying on a hospital bench for a mother who might die. Do you really believe I would think about taking advantage of this situation? But what if I can't pay you back? What if... Then don't pay me back. Julian wiped a tear from her face with his thumb. Let me do this for you. Let me be useful for something other than destroying things. Clara closed her eyes, feeling the warm touch of Julian's hands, the security that emanated from him. For the first time in her life, someone was taking care of her, protecting her, offering her what she needed most without asking anything in return. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for me? Julian hesitated, knowing that his answer would change everything between them. Because I love you. The words hung in the night air, heavy with meaning. Clara opened her eyes, finding a naked vulnerability in his gaze that made her tremble. Julian, I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other. But since that night at the mansion, I can't think of anything else. You awakened something in me that I thought was dead. He brushed a damp strand of hair from her face. I love you for the way you take care of flowers, for the pain in your eyes when you talk about your father, for the purity with which you touch my soul without even knowing it. Clara felt her heart breaking and healing at the same time. I love you too, she admitted in a whisper. And that terrifies me. Julian pulled her into his arms, and this time she didn't resist. She fit against his chest, as if she had been made for that place, feeling for the first time in her life what it meant to be completely protected. Don't be afraid, he murmured against her hair. We'll face everything together. But neither Julian nor Clara knew that across the street, a photographer hired by Veronica Castillo had captured every moment of the intimate encounter. The photos, Julian kissing Clara's tears, the two embracing on the hospital bench, were already being sent to the city's most influential tabloids. From that night on, their lives would be intertwined irreversibly, but the price of their love would be much higher than either of them could imagine. Donna Helena's surgery was a success, and in the following days, Clara divided her time between the hospital and stolen moments with Julian. They met discreetly, in small cafes away from downtown, in parks where no one would recognize them, or at his mansion after nightfall. It was as if they lived in a glass bubble, fragile and precious, where the outside world couldn't touch them. Julian had never experienced such emotional intensity. With Clara, he discovered that he could be just a man in love, not the ruthless tycoon that the world knew. They talked for hours about everything: art, music, abandoned dreams, deep fears. Clara made him laugh in a way he had forgotten was possible, and he made her feel valued in a way she had never imagined deserving. But their happiness did not go unnoticed. On Monday morning, Veronica Castillo was sitting in her office in Midtown Manhattan, smiling as she looked at the photographs scattered on her glass desk. Julian embracing an unknown woman in front of a hospital. Julian gently kissing the face of the same woman, the two walking hand in hand through the entrance to his mansion. "Perfect," she murmured, picking up the phone. "Ricardo, it's me. I need more information about Clara Alencar. I want to know everything. Where she lives, who she associates with, what her financial situation is. And discreetly, understand? We don't want to alarm anyone yet." Within 48 hours, Veronica had a complete dossier on Clara's life. Cleaning lady's daughter, father, unknown since age 12, supports her family alone, lives in a modest apartment in Queens. More importantly, no previous documented relationships, no romantic history that could be exploited. Interesting. Veronica smiled coldly as she called Henry Castillo, her father, and one of the most influential men in American media. "Daddy, I need a favor." Meanwhile, Clara was beginning to realize the difficulties of loving a man like Julian. She could no longer go to the places she used to frequent without being watched by strangers with cameras. Her simple neighborhood had become a hunting ground for paparazzi waiting for a compromising photo. She felt like a caged bird, loving her golden cage but suffering from the loss of freedom. "Julian, this is becoming unsustainable," she said one night when they met at the mansion. "Today there were 3 strange cars on my street. My neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, is terrified. She thinks they're gangsters." Julian pulled her into his arms, kissing her hair. "Maybe it's time for you to move. I can buy a discreet apartment in your name or—" "No," Clara pulled away, her eyes shining with determination. "I'm not going to hide as if I'm guilty of something. And I'm not going to accept any more money from you, Julian. It was already difficult to accept the help for Mom. Clara, be reasonable. You can't keep living like this. And you can't keep living as if I'm some dirty secret," she retorted, hurting him visibly. "When was the last time we went out during the day? When was the last time we didn't have to hide?" Julian ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "You don't understand the pressure I'm facing. My board of directors, the investors, the media. Everyone is watching every move I make. If our relationship became public now, what would happen? You'd lose some business. Your reputation would be questioned." Clara crossed her arms. "So what, Julian? Isn't that what couples do? Face the world together?" Before Julian could answer, his phone rang. It was Mark, with an urgency in his voice that made Julian instinctively turn on the speakerphone. "Julian, we have a problem. TMZ just called me. They have photos of you with Clara and want an official statement before publishing a story tomorrow." Clara felt her blood run cold. "What kind of photos? You two at the hospital, at the mansion, some discreet encounters?" Mark's voice was tense. "The headline is Tycoon and the Florist, Romance or Riches. They're insinuating that Clara might be taking advantage of you, Julian." "That's ridiculous," Julian said immediately, but Clara saw the hesitation in his eyes. "There's more," Mark continued. "Veronica Castillo gave an exclusive interview. She's suggesting that Clara is a skilled gold digger who took advantage of Julian's well-known generosity during a family crisis." Clara felt nauseous. What exactly did she say? That it's suspicious an unknown woman appears in Julian's life exactly when she needs money for a medical emergency? That you never had serious relationships because you were saving yourself for the right opportunity? The words hit Clara like slaps. Her purity, her inexperience, her virginity, everything was being twisted into a cruel narrative that painted her as a calculating manipulator. "Julian, we need to act quickly," Mark continued. "We can deny everything, claim you're just friends, or what?" Clara asked, her voice dangerously low. "Or we can confirm the relationship and try to control the narrative. But that would mean total exposure, Julian. Every aspect of your lives would be dissected publicly." Julian looked at Clara, seeing silent tears streaming down her face. She looked small and fragile, like a flower that had been violently torn from the soil. "Give us a few hours to decide," Julian said finally, hanging up the phone. The silence that followed was deafening. Clara wiped away the tears with the back of her hands, her dignity returning slowly. "Now I understand why you wanted to keep me a secret," she said calmly. "You knew this would happen." "Clara, no." She stood up, grabbing her purse. "You knew I would be attacked, humiliated, turned into a national joke. And even so, you allowed me to fall in love with you. That's not fair. I love you." "Do you really?" Clara paused at the door, turning to face him. "Because a man who loves a woman protects her. A man who loves doesn't let her be torn to shreds publicly while he decides if it's worth it to acknowledge the relationship." Julian felt the words like stabs. "What do you want me to do? Risk everything I've built?" "I want you to choose," Clara said simply. "Your immaculate reputation or the woman you say you love. But don't ask me to continue being your dirty secret while you weigh the pros and cons of loving me publicly." She left, leaving Julian alone with a decision that could destroy both his empire and his heart. Outside, Clara knew that the cameras were waiting, that every tear, every expression of pain would be captured and analyzed. But for the first time since she met Julian, she held her head high with pride. If she was going to be destroyed publicly, at least it would be with dignity. The story was published on Thursday, spreading across social media like wildfire. Tycoon and the Gold Digger, Julian Vance's million-dollar romance, occupied the cover of the country's most read magazine, with intimate photos that transformed every tender moment into evidence of manipulation. Clara woke up to the phone ringing insistently. It was Beatrice, her only close friend, with a choked voice. "Clara, have you seen? It's everywhere. The comments online are horrible." Clara turned on the television and felt the world collapse. Her photo was being displayed on every news channel, accompanied by cruel speculation about her motives. "Unknown florist conquers tycoon after mother's medical emergency." One headline read, "The virgin who calculated the right moment to give in," proclaimed another. The phone didn't stop ringing. Journalists wanting statements, curious neighbors, unknown numbers that cursed her when she answered. Clara unplugged the phone from the wall and curled up on the sofa, hugging her knees. At Vance Corporation, the situation was no better. Julian arrived at the office to find an emergency meeting already underway. The members of the board of directors awaited him with somber expressions. "Julian," said Albert Mendez, the chairman of the board, "we need to talk about this situation." "What situation?" Julian asked coldly, although he knew exactly what they were referring to. "3 of our largest investors withdrew their funds this morning," another member informed him. "The stock market is already reacting negatively. Vance shares have fallen 12% in 2 hours. Julian sat down slowly, processing the information. "Because of a magazine article?" "Because of public perception," Albert corrected. "Julian, you are the face of this company. Your image of professionalism, integrity, and control is what sets us apart from the competition. This story makes you look vulnerable, manipulable. What if I confirm the relationship? What if I explain the truth?" The members of the board exchanged meaningful glances. "Julian," said Dr. Carla Santos, the only woman in the group, softly, "do you really believe the public will buy the story of a pure love between a billionaire and a florist who desperately needed money?" The words hit Julian like a punch. Even his own advisors doubted Clara's sincerity. Meanwhile, Clara was facing her own storm. The flower shop was surrounded by reporters and onlookers. She couldn't leave the house without being photographed, and each photo was accompanied by venomous comments about her appearance, her simple clothes, her obvious social inferiority. But the worst was yet to come. On Friday, Veronica appeared at the hospital where Donna Helena was recovering. Clara was in the room, helping her mother with lunch, when the elegant woman entered uninvited. "Ms. Alencar, can we talk in private?" Donna Helena, still weak but alert, immediately noticed the tension. Clara, who is this woman? No one important, Mom. I'll handle this quickly. Clara left the room, facing Veronica in the hallway. What do you want? Veronica smiled coldly. I want you to disappear from Julian's life, permanently. And why would I do that? Because, my dear, I have information that can destroy your life and your family's. Veronica opened a folder, revealing documents and photographs. Your father, for example. I tracked him down. He didn't just abandon you, he was arrested for fraud 3 years after leaving. He's currently serving time for financial scams. Clara felt the ground collapse beneath her feet. That has nothing to do with me, doesn't it? What a coincidence that a criminal's daughter appears in Julian's life exactly when she needs money. Veronica flipped through more documents. And your younger sister, Amanda. What a pity to discover that she's involved with drugs. Petty theft to support her addiction. Nothing that can't be amplified in the media. You're lying, Clara whispered, but her hands were shaking. Am I? Amanda was arrested twice in the last year. Want to see the police reports? Veronica showed the photographs. Amanda being arrested, Amanda entering a crack den, Amanda shoplifting at a pharmacy. Clara leaned against the wall, feeling nauseous. She knew her sister had problems, but she didn't realize they were so serious. What do you want? Clara asked with a broken voice. I want you to break up with Julian, publicly. Admit that you were only interested in his money. In exchange, these documents disappear, and I can even help your sister get treatment at a private clinic. And if I refuse, then tomorrow all the newspapers in the country will know about your family of criminals. Your mother, who just had heart surgery, will discover through television that her husband is in prison and that her youngest daughter is a drug addict. Imagine the shock that would cause to her fragile heart. Clara closed her eyes, feeling hot tears streaming down her face. Veronica had found her greatest weakness, the family she protected above all else. You have 24 hours, Veronica said softly. Break up with Julian convincingly, or I destroy everything you love. That night, Clara called Julian for the last time. He answered immediately, his voice full of relief. Clara, thank God. Where have you been? I've been trying to call you all day. Julian, she began, forcing coldness into her voice. I need to talk to you. Of course. Come to the mansion. We can... No. Over the phone. Clara took a deep breath, preparing to shatter her own heart. This has to end. Silence on the other end of the line. Clara, if it's about the magazine article, it's about everything, she interrupted. About how our relationship was always an impossible fantasy. You were right from the beginning. We're from different worlds. Don't say that. We can face anything together. Can we? Clara forced a bitter laugh. Julian, you haven't even publicly acknowledged that you love me. When the pressure mounted, you hesitated. That made me realize something important. What? That maybe everyone is right about me. The words came out like ground glass in her throat. Maybe I really did take advantage of your generosity. Maybe I calculated everything from the beginning. Clara, stop it. I know you. Do you? She asked, each word a stab at herself. Do you know the daughter of a criminal who pretended to be pure and innocent to conquer a millionaire, who used her own mother's illness to awaken your compassion? You're not like that, Julian said firmly, but Clara could hear the growing doubt in his voice. How can you be sure? You yourself said that all the women in your life only wanted your money. Why would I be different? The silence stretched out, and Clara knew she had planted the seed of distrust. If that's how you really feel, Julian said finally, his voice cold and distant, then we have nothing more to talk about. No, we don't, Clara agreed, tearing herself apart inside. Goodbye, Julian. She hung up and collapsed on the floor, sobbing. Across town, Julian stood holding the phone, feeling as if a vital part of his soul had been torn away. Both had lost everything, and neither of them knew that they were being manipulated by the woman who had sworn to destroy the happiness they had found in each other. 2 weeks passed in silent agony. Clara had locked herself in her apartment, ignoring the insistent knocks of reporters and the phone calls from unknown numbers. Donna Helena had been discharged from the hospital and was recovering in the small apartment, asking questions that Clara couldn't answer about why everything had changed so drastically. "Daughter, you're as pale as a ghost," Donna Helena said one morning, watching Clara listlessly stir the soup she didn't intend to eat. "And what about Julian? Why don't I see him anymore?" "It's over, Mom," Clara replied simply. "It was for the best." Julian, in turn, had transformed into an even harsher version of himself. He worked 18 hours a day, closing deals with an aggressiveness that impressed even his most ruthless competitors. But at night, alone in the mansion, he found himself staring at the conservatory where they had dined together, trying to understand how he had been so wrong about Clara. It was Beatrice who planted the first seed of doubt in Clara's mind. "I don't believe it," she said, barging into the apartment one Thursday after managing to get past the security guards Clara had hired to keep the reporters away. "You can't be serious." "Bea, please, I don't want to talk about it." "Of course we're going to talk." Beatrice planted herself in front of Clara, forcing her to look up. "You've known me for 10 years. You've seen me do some questionable things for money, but you, Clara, you return change when you get too much at the grocery store. How can you be telling me that you took advantage of a man?" Clara looked away. "People change, not like that. Not you." Beatrice sat down next to her friend. "What really happened? And don't give me that story about how you calculated everything. You didn't even know who Julian Vance was until the day of the event at the hotel." For a moment, Clara considered telling the truth about Veronica, about the threats, about Amanda. But then she remembered the photographs of her sister and fell silent. "Forget it, Bea. It's better this way." Beatrice watched her friend with growing suspicion. She knew Clara too well to believe that version of the facts. Something wasn't right. The next day, Beatrice did something she had never done before. She used her contacts in the gossip world to investigate. As a public relations person for small events, she knew people who knew people. And one of those people was Carla, a freelance journalist who had worked on the story about Julian and Clara. "It was strange," Carla admitted when they met at a discreet cafe. "The story came to us practically ready-made. Professional photos, perfect angles, detailed information about the florist, as if someone had planned everything." "Someone like who?" "Veronica Castillo called my editor personally. She said she had an important story to tell about people who take advantage of powerful men. She offered exclusive access to the photos and even made herself available for an interview." Beatrice felt a chill run down her spine. "You think it was a setup?" "I don't know, but I can tell you one thing. In 15 years of journalism, I've rarely seen someone so eager to destroy an unknown person." While Beatrice investigated, Clara received an unexpected visit. Amanda was at the door of the apartment, thinner than Clara remembered, with deep, dark circles under her eyes and her hands trembling slightly. "Hi, sis," Amanda said with a forced smile. "Can I come in?" Clara hugged her, feeling how much weight her sister had lost. "Amanda, where have you been? I've tried to call you several times." "Around." Amanda avoided her sister's gaze. "I heard you got famous. You dated a billionaire." "That's over," Clara said quickly. "Want some coffee?" "Actually," Amanda fidgeted nervously with her hands. "I need to tell you something. A woman contacted me a few weeks ago. Veronica something. She said you were dating her ex-boyfriend and that she could help me with my problems." Clara froze. "What kind of help?" "She paid off my debt to the dealers. She said I didn't have to worry anymore, that she would take care of everything." Amanda finally met her sister's eyes. "Clara, she knew things about me that even you don't know. About the times I was arrested, about what I did to get money for drugs." Clara's heart began to beat erratically. "Amanda, what else did she say? That if you kept dating Julian, she was going to tell everything to the press, that she was going to destroy our family." Amanda began to cry. "Clara, I messed everything up again, didn't I? Because of me, you lost the guy you loved. Clara pulled her sister into a tight embrace, her mind racing. Veronica had lied. She hadn't just blackmailed Clara, she had manipulated Amanda first, creating the perfect situation to blackmail Clara. Amanda, listen carefully. I want you to tell me everything you talked about with that woman, every detail. While Amanda revealed the sordid details of Veronica's manipulation, Beatrice was having another revelation. Mark Henriquez, Julian's assistant, had agreed to meet her after she lied about being an investigative journalist. Mr. Vance is devastated, Mark admitted after his third drink. But not in the way you imagine. He's not angry at Clara for taking advantage of him. He's angry at himself for doubting her. What do you mean? I've known him for 10 years. I've seen him with dozens of gold diggers. His reaction has always been cynicism, of I knew it was like that. But this time, Mark shook his head. He keeps looking at the pictures of them together as if he's trying to find signs of falsehood and can't. I think he knows, deep down, that she was genuine. So why doesn't he go after her? Because she herself admitted that she was interested in the money. She was the one who broke up with him, remember? She said horrible things about having calculated everything. Mark sighed. Julian has too much pride to pursue a woman who clearly said she doesn't love him. Beatrice left the meeting with the certainty that both Clara and Julian were being manipulated, but she still needed to figure out how to prove it. The answer came from an unexpected source. On Friday morning, Clara was at the flower shop trying to work when an elegant middle-aged woman entered. It was Dr. Helena Santos, a member of the Vance Corporation's board of directors. Ms. Alencar, I'm Helena Santos. I really need to talk to you. Clara greeted her cautiously, offering water while preparing for another humiliation. I met your mother, Dr. Santos said softly. At the hospital, I went to visit her when I heard about the relationship between you and Julian. Why? Because I wanted to meet the woman who had made my friend smile for the first time in years. Dr. Santos leaned forward. Clara, can I call you that? I've seen Julian in recent months. I saw how he changed when he met you, and I saw how devastated he was after the breakup. Clara looked away. It was better this way, was it? Because from where I'm sitting, I see two people who love each other being miserable because of pride. Dr. Santos took a folder out of her bag. Clara, do you know that Veronica Castillo is buying shares of Vance Corporation? What do you mean? She's orchestrating a hostile takeover. With Julian emotionally unstable and the company destabilized by this scandal, she intends to take over the control. Dr. Santos showed her financial documents. She needs Julian to remain demoralized and distracted. That's why it was essential to separate you two. Clara felt the world spin. You're saying that... I'm saying that you've been manipulated from the beginning, and if we don't do something quickly, Veronica will manage to destroy both Julian and you, and still win a company worth billions as a bonus. Clara looked at the documents, finally understanding the magnitude of the betrayal they had suffered. Veronica hadn't just broken two hearts. She had meticulously planned the destruction of everything Julian had built. It was time to fight. Clara spent the night planning every detail. Dr. Santos had given her valuable information. Veronica would present her hostile takeover proposal at a special board meeting on Monday at 9 in the morning. It was the perfect chance to expose the whole truth. With Beatrice's help, Clara managed to document everything. The secret recordings that Amanda had made of her meetings with Veronica at Clara's insistence as proof of her own statements, the bank records showing the suspicious payments to journalists, and even the text messages where Veronica coordinated the smear campaign. On Monday morning, Clara dressed in the only suit she owned, simple but elegant, and walked determinedly towards Vance Tower. Her heart was pounding, but her mind was crystal clear. It was time to fight for the man she loved and for the truth. The boardroom on the 50th floor was packed when Clara arrived. Julian was sitting at the head of the table, paler and thinner than she remembered, but still magnificently imposing. His eyes met hers across the room, and for a moment, time stopped. "What is she doing here?" Veronica asked sharply, clearly surprised and annoyed by Clara's presence. "I invited her," said Dr. Santos calmly. "Clara Alencar has information relevant to this meeting." Julian stood up, confused. "Clara, I don't understand." "Julian, please sit down," Clara said softly. "There are things you need to know before it's too late." Veronica tried to interrupt. "This is ridiculous. This woman has no place in a corporate meeting." "This woman," Clara said, her voice gaining strength, "has proof that Ms. Castillo orchestrated an elaborate campaign of blackmail and manipulation to destroy Julian Vance and take control of this company." A murmur went through the room. Julian looked fixedly at Clara, then at Veronica, beginning to connect the dots. "That's absurd," Veronica protested, but Clara noticed the growing panic in her eyes. "Is it?" Clara took out her cell phone and activated a recording. Veronica's voice echoed through the room. "I want you to break up with Julian, publicly. Admit that you were only interested in his money. In exchange, these documents disappear." The silence in the room was deafening. Julian stood up slowly, his face a mask of controlled anger. "Continue," he said to Clara, his voice dangerously low. Clara showed the falsified photographs, the payments to paparazzi, the documents proving that Veronica had illegally investigated her family. With each revelation, Julian grew paler with fury. "She blackmailed my sister first," Clara explained, her voice trembling but firm. "She paid off Amanda's debts to drug dealers, then used that as ammunition against me. She said that if I didn't break up with you, she would destroy my whole family." Julian turned to Veronica, his eyes blazing with a fury that Clara had never seen. You made her believe that I would abandon her at the first difficulty." "Julian, you have to understand." Veronica tried to approach him, but he recoiled as if she were poisonous. "Understand what? That you deliberately destroyed the only good thing that has ever happened in my life." Julian's voice was laden with deep pain. "That you made me doubt the only woman who has ever truly loved me." Veronica tried a last resort. "She may still be lying, Julian. She may have fabricated this evidence to what?" Julian exploded. "To gain what, Veronica? She's here saving my company from you, not asking for anything in return." He turned to Clara, and she saw tears shining in his eyes. "Clara, God, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have fought for us. You didn't know," Clara said softly, approaching him. "She manipulated us perfectly. She knew our fears, our insecurities." "I love you," Julian said, his voice breaking. "I never stopped loving you, not for a second, even when I thought that I knew in my heart that you were real." "I love you too," Clara whispered, gently touching his face. "That's why it was so difficult to lie to you. Every word I said on that call tore me apart inside." Julian pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a desperate intensity, as if trying to make up for all the weeks of separation and pain. Around them, the members of the board watched with expressions that ranged from relief to embarrassment. When they finally separated, Julian turned to Veronica with a deadly coldness. "You have 5 minutes to leave my building before I call security, and if you try anything against Clara or her family again, I'll destroy you personally and financially." Understood? Veronica left in silence, defeated and humiliated, her attempted coup foiled by the courage of the woman she had underestimated. Albert Mendez, the chairman of the board, cleared his throat. "Well, Julian, I think we can consider this special meeting resolved. The acquisition proposal is obviously rejected." Julian nodded distractedly, his eyes fixed on Clara. "Gentlemen, if you'll excuse me, I have urgent personal matters to attend to." 3 months later, Clara was in the mansion's conservatory, arranging orchids for that night's dinner, when Julian appeared behind her. "Mrs. Future Vance," he murmured, kissing her neck. Clara smiled, still getting used to the engagement ring that sparkled on her finger. "Mr. Vance, you're going to make me drop these expensive flowers." I think I can afford some new flowers," he joked, turning her to face him. especially considering that my fiancé is the best florist in New York." "Just in New York?" Clara feigned indignation. "In the whole United States," Julian corrected, sealing the correction with a soft kiss. Donna Helena was recovering completely, now living in the annex of the mansion that Julian had insisted on building. Amanda had been clean for 2 months, undergoing treatment at a private clinic that Julian discreetly funded. And Clara had finally learned that true love wasn't about belonging to different worlds, but about creating a new world together. "Julian," she said softly, "do you regret it? Anything we've been through?" He pulled her closer, his eyes shining with a tenderness that she knew was only for her. "Never. Every moment of pain was worth it to get here, with you in my arms, knowing that you chose me not for what I have, but for who I am." "And what are you?" she asked, although she already knew the answer. "Yours," he replied simply. "Completely yours." Outside, the sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky with golden hues that reflected in the windows of the conservatory. 2 hearts that had been torn apart by manipulation and fear had finally found their way back to each other, proving that true love, when tested by adversity, only becomes stronger. Clara Alencar, the shy florist who once shouted, "Don't touch me," to the country's most powerful tycoon, now danced in his arms, knowing that she had found not only the love of her life, but the courage to fight for it. And Julian Vance, the man who had built an empire but lived in solitude, finally discovered that his greatest achievement wasn't in business or money, but in the pure heart of the woman who had taught him that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's strength. They had won. Love had won.